Why doesn't God give us more proof that he exists?
That is a very good question.
Right? I won't believe in God until he appears right before me. We hear this kind of talk all the time.
I don't. The atheists I've heard would be convinced with any compelling evidence that isn't otherwise explainable. But the trouble is that they don't see any.
But again, why do they demand proof? Jesus, matter of fact, said it's a wicked and adulterous generation that seeks after a sign, and there'll be no sign given to it but this, right?
So you're saying that the people who want a reason to believe in God aren't given any evidence that God exists because they're not the way that God wants them to be. Is that what you're saying?
So the first thing that I ask back, again, and this is, well, what kind of proof would be convincing to you?
Pretty much anything empirical. However, since God himself is unobservable and untestable, we'd have to see evidence of him affecting the world around us. But we haven't seen any like that. That doesn't have more logical explanations.
The universe is here, right? I mean, crud, if you walk along the road and you see a watch on the ground, you don't say, I need proof of a watchmaker. If you see a painting on the wall, you don't ask for proof of a painter. The fact that the thing is there is enough proof.
Because we understand that we, humans, make those things. Just because we make technology and artwork does not mean that everything in the universe is made in a similar means. This is an undistributed middle fallacy. You're saying that everything we create exists, and that the universe exists, therefore the universe was created. But it doesn't work that way.
But that's not good enough.
No, it's not. Because we have no reason to believe that things have to be created intelligently in order to exist.
So what could constitute as proof? And usually it's something fantastic. God needs to appear before me in flames of fire, or write his name across the sky, or something ridiculous like that.
Actually, as I understand it, most people would not take that as proof. Hallucinations aren't as uncommon as you might think, and it's more reasonable to believe that it's a hallucination as opposed to a revelation from God.
I said, why do you really, if you're not open to subtler evidences, why do you think that that would convince you? Think about it. God appears to you gloriously, and then what happens? Maybe God comes to a parent in need whose child has just passed away, and they pray and they raise the dead child back to life. There's a miracle for you. What about that?
The trouble with that is that it doesn't happen. It's just an anecdote. Now, if that sort of thing did happen consistently, then it would be believable. But it doesn't, so it's not.
And then what happens? The parents call all of their friends in the atheist club and say, you'll never guess what happened. Out of a last-ditch effort, we prayed and our child was brought back to life. And the atheist club members are going to say, well, it was just probably a coincidence. It wasn't truly God. You know, it's you guys are just overwhelmed by the emotion of it all.
You do know that atheists aren't generally part of an atheist club, right? Most atheists are just people.
Even the big signs, like the flaming letters. You go to sleep and you wake up the next morning and you go, did that really happen? Kind of feels like a dream now.
Which is a valid question, because we do have dreams and nightmares. I mean, I can dream about Skeletor, so if I see a vision from God in a similar way as a dream about Skeletor, it makes it less believable, because I understand that my imagination can fabricate things.
Maybe God should do it again. Show me it a second time, then I'll really know. But then your friends are like, well, I think you've been to Colorado one too many times hitting this stuff. I think you've got to lay off that because you're crazy now. You're just seeing things, right? He didn't appear to me with a flaming letter, so I guess God has to do it to him and keep doing it.
Why wouldn't he? Why would him proving himself to one person be reliable for everyone? Believe it or not, people's personal accounts aren't reliable information, because people can say and believe anything they want, regardless of whether it's true or not.
See, the level of the burden of proof is not reasonable. This is not how we prove things.
You're right. We prove things with empirical evidence, of which we have none for the existence of a deity.
And that's what we've seen. And I mentioned this before in John chapter 12, when the Pharisees are planning to kill Jesus because he threw all the money changers out of the temple and all that stuff. They get together and they say, okay, we've got this plot, we're going to kill Jesus, but we better kill that Lazarus guy too, because guess what? He's walking around after being dead for 4 days, and people are turning to Jesus because of him. Now, these are the Pharisees saw this stuff with their own eyes, and their response wasn't, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall on my face. Here's the proof I need. Their response was, we better kill the Lazarus guy who was risen from the dead because he's too much of a liability for us.
Well, back then, they did believe in sorcery, so it wasn't clear to them whether what he did came from God or via sorcery. And there isn't any historical evidence that such a thing actually happened. All we have are the written accounts of several people. And like I said, personal accounts aren't reliable information, nor are they evidence.
But this is the way people are. Their hearts are so hardened that they don't want to admit it, so they'll make up any excuse.
And this, my friends, is called bulverism. They're saying we're wrong because our hearts are hardened, when in fact that's not usually the case. Usually people disbelieve because they see no reason to believe.
We've had miracles. This is the thing. We have eyewitness testimony. There was a hand that appeared and wrote the names of, in the book of Daniel, many tekel upharsin, right? And did that make the Babylonians convert right away? No. They shook in their boots, but they didn't become believers. When Jesus rose from the dead, we have first-hand accounts by his eyewitnesses that he did that. Did that make anybody believe? Well, some believe, but those that will refuse that eyewitness testimony, why would they accept your eyewitness testimony of your miracle?
Personal accounts aren't reliable information, and if all we have is a book that was written 2,000 years ago, why should we believe it? I don't believe everything that I read in a book of mythology.
The proof of Christ, the proof of God, is truly in the design of the world, just like it's in the design of the watch or the design of the painting.
And those things are irrelevant to the universe. Just because we can create technology and artwork does not mean that the universe was created by the same means.
Now, I'm not going to go deep into that tonight because next week I'm going to cover it more completely.
Is there really anything more you can say about it? I genuinely want to know.
Let me see, what is the last estimate they said? They said, imagine if you were on one end of the universe and you had a bow and arrow and you were told to hit a single atom on the other end of the universe. That's the level of the odds of these things falling together, these different parameters of the universe falling together just by chance.
That argument doesn't really make sense. The probability of these parameters falling together isn't really something that we can figure out. And the probability of the sustainability of life is really on a planetary basis within solar systems. And if there's trillions of galaxies, each with trillions of planets, it's not unreasonable that out of that incomprehensibly large amount of planets, there be at least one that can and does sustain life.
So, there is proof.
Nuh-uh.
How much proof would you need? Would it take?
I'd really just need good proof, particularly empirical proof that is repeatably testable.
Okay, so you'll believe if there's flaming letters across the sky. What else? What less? Do you ever use that criteria for anything else in life?
Not really, because everything else in life is observable and testable. We can see that it's there, but the same is not true to deities.
It's a level of criteria that is beyond reasonable. They're not being reasonable in this.
Maybe the most stubborn atheists can be unreasonable, but the vast majority of atheists are reasonable. It looks like that's the end of the video. Now don't get me wrong, it's not unreasonable to be religious, but I do want you to understand what proof is and what isn't proof. Bye. Am I the only one that thinks that the word fallacy should be an adjective to describe things that look like a penis?